Hi students, I'm Una.
And I'm Scott.
I'm a UK OET teacher.
I'm also an OET teacher from the UK.
We've been teaching students to pass their exams for many years.
And now we're excited to help you pass your exams too.
This is the Swoosh English OET Podcast.
Let's get started.
Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET complete guide to writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Swoosh English Podcast. My name's Scott.
And my name is Una.
And today we're going to go through the speaking section of the OET exam, specifically how to show empathy.
Very good. A fundamental part of your speaking test in the OET exam, don't you think?
I absolutely agree. So why is empathy so important for the OET examination? Well, if you even have a look at the scoring criteria, you're of course scored in two different sections. One being your linguistic criteria, aka your English ability, your grammar, your expression, your intelligibility, your pronunciation, etc. But also very important though is your clinical communication criteria, of which showing empathy is an incredibly important point of.
Yeah, it can be linked into a lot of the different criteria within the communication section. And, it's just, you need to think about as well in making this situation as realistic to real life as possible. Would you go into a real life interaction with a patient who is feeling stressed or anxious about the news you're about to tell them and, speak to them in a monotone voice and not try and make them feel comfortable and using language to show empathy? You wouldn't.
Precisely,
right?
no. As a doctor or a nurse or a physiotherapist, dentist, etc., you're going to be showing empathy naturally, but it's important that actually transfers across into your own English language ability when you're doing this test too.
Exactly, because the point is for this part of your test, speaking section, you're going to be feeling anxious and nervous yourself. But it might seem obvious, but you really have to remember to actually, try and forget about that. You need to treat the interlocutor as a person who's feeling anxious and nervous about the results or whatever the news is you're about to tell them or how they feel in their current, health situation. So you kind of have to turn it on its head and remember, I'm the confident one in this. I'm showing empathy to this person.
Precisely. So should we just actually describe what exactly empathy is so we actually understand that we're all on the same page?
Definitely. Would you like to just read out the definition?
So a definition of empathy is the following. The ability to understand how someone else feels because you can imagine what it is like to be them, aka to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yes, are you all familiar with that little thing? To put yourself in someone else's shoes.
We have an idiom there, so you don't actually physically go try on someone's shoes. I recommend if you do, it's one of your friends, you don't steal them. But it's a figure of speech to feel how someone else feels or to imagine their pain, their anxiety, their nervousness, etc.
Exactly.
Which a patient will be undergoing when they obviously see you as part of your practice.
Yeah, even though you yourself are not actually in that situation at the given moment, you're just able to understand how they might feel. Understanding their reactions because of the situation they're in, and just really trying to show that when you're speaking to them through, of course, as we will talk about today, through your language, through the sounds even that you make, through your body language. So all of these are very important. So shall we get into it then?
Let's get into it.
Shall we start to break down how we can really show empathy as we are going through our speaking OET exam? So of course, as we mentioned, there are lots of different criteria where, showing empathy is really important to get all these marks required in the criteria. So first of all, we'll just give an outline of what the speaking exam actually is.
Lead the way.
So it's 20 minutes in total, 20 minutes. You're going to go in and you will have a little 2-minute warm-up conversation with the interlocutor.
Which is unscored, of course, as well.
Yeah, that's unscored. So really just use that as a way to, warm up and obviously show off to your examiner straight away, or your interlocutor, should I say. Straight away, start showing off, that you're comfortable, you're confident. And even if you're not feeling that way, try and just fool them into thinking that's how you feel.
It's also important at this point that you don't overload into empathy, such as saying, I understand how you feel today, Mr. Interlocutor. interlocutor. No, that's not appropriate at this point.
I'm sorry that you've had to do like so many of these different speaking sections today. Not overly necessary.
You might appreciate that though still, yeah.
Okay, so then you'll be given your little role play card, and you'll have 3 minutes to study that and take down any notes that you want to, and just really analyze and assess what your situation is that you're going to have to deal with, what problem your patient has, what news you have to give them. Okay, and of course you have to do that 2 times. Okay,
yeah, so 2 different role plays. We'll make a total of 20 minutes in total for the speaking test.
And the role play is 5 minutes.
5 minutes per role play,
Yes.
yeah, times 2 plus the 3 minutes planning for each one plus the 2 minutes equals 20 minutes approximately.
Well done.
There we go.
Okay, so 20 minutes speaking, and then you will be done out of that situation, hopefully passed and ready to move on. So ultimately, this is all about putting yourself in the situation of treating someone who is in your care.
Yes, who is in need of your care as well. So not obviously their physical needs, but also their emotional needs too. Because often when someone is sick, it's not just how they feel physically that's important, but also their emotional state of being as well. They might have a serious disease, or they might just be very worried and nervous about the situation. So it is important, therefore, that you do show that you care to that patient
definitely.
overall.
And like we said at the beginning, language skills are of course important, but not to come at the detriment of your communication skills.
Yes.
So shall we just briefly look at the criteria?
Yes.
We can give a brief overview of the language skills, but of course today is going to focus more on the communication criteria. So let's get into it.
So obviously, as I mentioned previously, you're scored on your linguistic criteria and your clinical communication criteria. Linguistic criteria are simply your intelligibility, aka your pronunciation, your intonation, and how clearly your listener can hear you. Your fluency, are you able to speak consistently, or do you have to stop every so often and show repetition in your language? Appropriateness of your language, is it an appropriate tone? Is it good for your profession, etc., etc.? And also your resource of grammar and your expression. Basically, how good is your grammar and how good is your relative clinical vocabulary? But that's not so important. What we're looking at today is your clinical communication criteria. So the first criteria we look at is called your relationship building, which according to OET themselves is the impact of your choice of opening to the conversation and demonstration of empathy and respect on your listeners' comfort. So there's the word that's actually being used in the criteria itself. Can you build a relationship? Don't forget, you're not going to be talking to the patient like you're both robots. You need to show that you've made a connection with this person, that you have alleviated their fears, etc. as well. You've been kind and you've been courteous. So,
and like it even says in the criteria, and we'll talk about this more in the podcast, the opening of the conversation is so important, just to set that boundary straight away. Because if you open the conversation, badly, right? And automatically the patient feels a little bit, oh, I didn't like that. I don't like this person. They will withdraw.
Exactly. Because if I was seeing a doctor or a nurse, for example, and they were cold, they weren't showing any warmth or any emotional intelligence there whatsoever, I would feel, I'm not sure if I really enjoy this person. So empathy is highly important.
From the word go.
Not just obviously during your practice, but also in the OET examination, because you are doing the OET examination to practice your profession in a native English speaking country. You need to actually transfer those skills appropriately, and that's what this test is trying to see that you can do importantly.
Exactly.
So also understanding and incorporating as well, which is the impact of how fully you involve the patient in the conversation on your listeners' understanding and comfort. So you have to show that you are listening to the patient. You are taking on any queries they have. If they're giving some really, really harsh information or upsetting information, that you show that you're listening as well.
Yeah, and that you involve them in the conversation,
Yes.
and you're not just, talking, and they're sitting there, not getting involved in the conversation. And then we have the providing structure element of it. So making sure how you organize the information, how you introduce perhaps new ideas, that you build up. For example, if you have to give them bad news, that you build up to that bad news in an effective, and empathetic way.
Yes.
Very good. So providing structure is very important. What about information gathering then?
Information gathering is whenever you are using a mixture of open and closed questions which have been appropriately worded for sensitive matters to show that you are getting the information, giving the appropriate diagnosis. So that's also where empathy can come in as well. Instead of asking them direct questions, you might word them to make them sound a little bit softer to delivery. And then also
very important.
In combination with information gathering, then you have information giving. So you've gathered that information, you've collected it, now you have to give your diagnosis. So exactly, you have to think about how can I deliver this in the kindest way possible. It might not upset this person, and it shows that I care and I understand about how they feel as well.
Making sure that listener is comfortable and, understanding as well what you're saying. You're not using lots of doctor speak.
Yes.
And, making it very difficult for them to understand. Where the patient doesn't have to turn around and go, sorry, can I have that in English?
Can I have that in English? Or most importantly, you don't obviously deliver it in a very robotic way, that if you have to give them any any unfortunate information, you're giving it in the kindest way possible. That shows
we will
that you
talk
care.
about that today.
But we'll
as
get
well.
into that overall.
About intonation and how important that is. Okay, wonderful. So let's get into then how to show empathy, and we'll go through 4 big factors that we're going to talk about today, and we'll try and give you some examples as we go along, some sentences that you can even use in your OET exam.
Because ultimately, this is what you want as well. You want practical examples that can be used moving forward from us.
Exactly. And obviously, if you learn some of these sentences, and again, learning something off by heart isn't necessarily good because you can sometimes sound robotic. But
Precisely.
obviously, it's a good idea to have some sentences that you use, or some sounds even, at your disposal that you can then, use every time that you practice for this exam.
Yeah, of course. But we can use these as ideas and templates that you can use and mold depending on the role play that you're giving when you practice in your own time. So what's the first example, Una? Would you like to go through it?
Yeah, so the first thing is straight away showing that you're trying to set your patient at ease, okay? So like we said there, we touched on it a little bit. You'd want to open that conversation straight away with a very warm, friendly approach, and that the patient walks in and straight away they feel from your demeanor and the things you say, oh, I'm comfortable with this person.
Yeah.
Because of course you have to remember, they feel nervous and anxious, okay? They don't know what news they're going to get, or maybe they have something that they've been feeling recently that they want to tell you and they don't know how your reaction will be. So you always have to keep it in your head. This person is maybe anxious, nervous. So straight away you want to, put them in a comfortable position. Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET complete guide to writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below. So as a rule of thumb, we wouldn't say, well, what's the problem today? To the patient, for example. We need to show consistent empathy.
Exactly. So straight away, consider just simple things like a welcome greeting, okay? So like a warm welcome greeting, such as, hello, how are you feeling today? Welcome to this meeting. And it's all about the emotion that you show.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is doctor, or my name is nurse so-and-so, and I will be your charge nurse today. Welcome to the practice. Welcome to the session. Please have a seat. Something like that.
Yeah, so we have lots of different... so good afternoon, Miss Wilson. Please take a seat, like you said. Asking the patient how they have been feeling recently is also really important. How have you been getting on since the last time we spoke? So, of course, that's going to be important whether you've, spoken to the person before.
Yeah, it could be a follow-up routine.
Yeah, whether you've spoken to the person before. But yeah, just dealing with that discomfort head on and asking something like that. How has your life been, since I saw you last? And also just acknowledging discomfort right from the beginning is super important as well. Straight away, not trying to almost, ignore the fact of why you're really there.
Yes.
And dealing with that discomfort straight away head on. So an example might be, an example might be, I can imagine that you may be feeling a little anxious about your visit today, but I can assure you that I am here to support you and assist your recovery.
You want to say that again one more time, a little slower?
Okay,
it was good, but I think ultimately students can actually use this as well when moving forward.
Yeah, so take note of this as well. Take note of the sentence. So I can imagine that you may be feeling a little anxious about your visit today, but I assure you that I am here to support and assist your recovery.
Fantastic. So you could use that as a template and mold it depending on what you have to do. But obviously, if you're a doctor, that's especially useful in giving information. But it can be used by a nurse, a dentist, a physiotherapist as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's suitable for everyone.
Yeah.
So these are really important things to do to put your patient at ease straight away. Welcome greeting, asking them how they've been recently, and acknowledging any discomfort or any situation that they might have been in straight away, head on. And what you're going to do to help them with it.
Fantastic. So that's point 1. Welcome greeting, make them feel at ease from the beginning. Let's move on to point number 2 now, which is backchanneling. So what exactly is backchanneling? Well, here's an example. So when I'm talking to someone, or one of you guys are talking to someone, and someone's not really listening, you're just sitting there in complete silence. How does that make you feel as a person? Are you communicating effectively? After all, it does take 2 to tango, so to say. So this is where backchanneling comes in. And as a medical professional or anyone who's speaking English or any language, you need to ensure that you're using some utterances which show that you are listening and caring. So they can be very, very simple to show that we're listening. For example, someone's talking to you about a condition, you can use words such as right. Notice with the head nod as well. Okay. Maybe something a bit more serious has been dropped. You could say, oh dear, or of course. So notice that these phrases indicate that you are listening to the patient.
Definitely.
And if you use these appropriately at the most important parts of the conversation, you're going to actually improve your score in relationship building, information gathering, and even information giving as well.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you make your patient feel comfortable and like you are caring about what they are saying and like you're really listening by giving these kinds of utterances, as you said, then that will make them feel more comfortable and actually more inclined to perhaps divulge more information,
open up
to you.
more information, and the more information you have in your role play as well, then the better that your chances of giving them an appropriate diagnosis as well.
And just for your criteria information gathering. So yeah, that's so important. And like you said, if just put yourself in the shoes of a conversation where, a previous experience you had of you were telling someone a problem perhaps, and they were just sitting there like almost bored, not reacting to what you were saying. And you're thinking, hello, are you listening? Are you listening to me, or do you simply not care what I'm talking about? So just imagine how awful that would feel.
Yes.
It does seem pretty obvious, but just don't forget to make those signs. And like you said, body language as well, nodding your head, showing reactions on your face, perhaps not like, okay, not a good idea,
of course,
but just some, small reactions on your face as well, using body language.
Right. So I may have done those a little bit sarcastically there, but I'm just trying to prove a point.
I was wondering. I was like, I made a joke. Why did you not laugh?
So the point is that they may come across as being very, you might think they're obvious things to do, and they might come across as quite repetitive. But when you're in that situation in the exam, and maybe you are nervous yourself, you're not going through things in autopilot, you kind of frozen up, you may forget to do simple things like that, which actually could cost you marks. So it's important to show that you care by using back-channeling responses like that to show that you're listening ultimately.
Yeah, but ultimately as well, don't interrupt. Now, whenever we are saying these things with back-channeling and making these sounds and saying these words every now and again, that doesn't mean you're interrupting the patient, They know that you're just providing comments in order to, show that they're listening and keep going, but you don't need to say like big full sentences in the middle of their little dialogue,
because that can be distracting.
And they might forget their train of thought or just feel uncomfortable with you butting in, so to speak.
Yes, ultimately.
Yeah. Okay, so that's great. So we've had our putting the patient at ease right from the beginning and the ways to do that. We've looked at our back channeling, how you can make sounds to show you're listening throughout. And now we're going to just look at putting yourself in the patient's shoes.
Disclaimer, it does not mean actually stealing someone's shoes. For example, if you're a shoe thief, you can't say, I was showing empathy. I was putting myself in someone else's shoes. That's not how it works. Anyway, that's my joke out of the way. So putting yourself in patient's shoes.
Yes, okay. So making sure that you demonstrate that you understand how the patient is actually feeling, trying to show them and using language as an expression of your ability to understand. So of course this can be done through direct empathy or indirect empathy. So direct empathy is actually because you have been in that situation before, that you actually have experienced what they are going through right now. And of course you can use that in this given situation. So for example, let me read out my example. I understand your concerns about choosing whether to opt for pain relief during labour. I faced the same decision myself before I was due to give birth.
So the person has experienced, the doctor, the nurse, the physiotherapist, etc., has experienced this directly before, and they're putting themselves directly in the person's shoes because they have experience of it themselves.
Yeah.
So of course in the OET examination, even if you haven't experienced the ailment before, you can pretend that you have as well, and then actually practice using some phrases to give direct empathy.
Yeah.
And it works a wonder, because obviously if someone else has experienced something like you have, you feel more at ease and more comfortable, and that shows empathy in a very good way.
Definitely. Like, even if I think about that myself, if I was going through someone and someone said I actually experienced the same thing as you, I know straight away that would make me feel more comfortable. I'd be like, oh, okay, you've experienced this too. I feel less self-conscious of the fact that
more open to discuss it.
More open to discuss it as well. And of course, then if you haven't been in that situation, or you don't want to use that direct empathy, you can use indirect empathy, which of course means that you haven't actually been in that situation before, but you still want to use language which shows that you can empathize with their situation and put yourself in their shoes. So an example of that might be, I can't begin to imagine how you're feeling to receive this news. Please know we did everything we possibly could to save your family member. Okay, or another really good one. I can only appreciate it must be a low priority for you to care for your teeth when you're homeless. Before you leave, I will give you a toothbrush and toothpaste to use to keep you going for a while. Okay, so that's a good word there. I can only appreciate, you know, I can appreciate what you're going through, because ultimately I haven't actually experienced it, but I can still appreciate how difficult or challenging this is.
So, and a combination of both of these would be appropriate depending on the context of the role play, because ultimately they both do show empathy, but it's important that you put yourself in the person's shoes, and if you can't actually directly relate to what they're going through, then try and imagine as best as possible to show that you care.
Yeah, and use suitable language to show you care, like I appreciate or I understand. These are great buzzwords to show empathy. Okay, so what is our next one then?
The fourth and final point is our use of intonation to show that we can show empathy. So when it comes to intonation, it is quite tricky to use in the English language. But what kind of intonation patterns should we use in order to express empathy?
I think that's a good point, because, you know, there aren't a lot of times students learning English, like they want these hard set rules. But with intonation, it's not the kind of thing that you can get these rules from, that it's the same with every native speaker, the way they use intonation. At the end of the day, intonation varies from speaker to speaker, you know, country to country, wherever the person's from. It varies depending on the emotion that they want to show on any given day, the words that they want to stress and emphasize in their sentence.
Great point.
So the only thing is that we can, you know, follow guidelines really when it comes to showing intonation. And of course, one of those guidelines is when you are showing empathy, you want to lower your intonation.
So lowering your intonation versus using a flat tone, or even a rising tone as well. A flat tone is basically devoid of complete emotion normally, and a rising tone would suggest inquisitiveness, excitement, or even a question. Now, you don't want to look excited or sound excited whenever someone's talking about a serious health condition. So it is appropriate to use what's called a falling intonation. Now, of course, this is quite tricky to do, and it might even be quite tricky for us to do on the spot.
On the spot.
So we're going to go through a few examples using the same situation, the same card. So here's an example of the phrase, "This must be a very difficult situation for you." So I'll try and use it in a flat intonation. "This must be a very difficult situation for you."
So that's with like no intonation at all.
No intonation.
It's like a robotic tone.
Completely flat. You're going to be turned off by this. Oh, this person doesn't care.
Yeah, they don't understand. They're just saying these words. They don't mean anything by these words. So basically a robotic tone with like poor intonation is the worst thing that you can do. In any speaking exam, I'm sure you would have gotten this advice, you know, if you'd taken IELTS before or any other exam. Don't just use that robotic tone. You want to be, in English, we like to go up and down, flowing the whole time, but especially when you're trying to show empathy. Really important.
Likewise, using a rising intonation, aka, "This must be a very difficult situation for you," would show inquisitiveness, curiosity, or even a question. It's like, why are you so excited about me talking about this? It's not appropriate. So try and keep your intonation not flat and don't rise it. Try to lower it ever so slightly. Now, here's the best example. "This must be a very difficult situation for you." So a slight fall at the very end, showing that you do care and you do show empathy. Was that good? What do you think?
It still seemed very serious. You know, you were like, "This must be a very difficult situation for you."
Well, I am talking to you in front of the camera, so it is pretty difficult.
It's also very difficult to put yourself on the spot and really say it as you would say it naturally, you know, if you were speaking.
I'm trying to feign empathy right now.
Exactly.
But the important part is that you do practice. You do have to do some practice with actually showing empathy via your intonation with a slight fall at the end. Listen to how doctors use it, for example, in TV shows.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, you can listen to all these things as you're listening to anything like your podcast or YouTube videos. Pay attention to the intonation as well and see how it is used throughout the recording to show empathy or really, you know, any type of emotion that is try to be, got tongue twisted there, that you were trying to show in the given situation. Okay, wonderful. So there are our tips for giving empathy, showing empathy throughout your speaking section in the OET exam. Let's just recap. We have showing empathy, putting the person at ease right from the beginning and the different ways that you can do that. Then we have our, I've forgotten what our second one was.
I'll have a look at the notes. What did we say?
What was the second one we talked about today? We talked about putting ourselves in the patient's shoes. We talked about today. We talked about backchanneling. That's what it was. Backchanneling.
Of course.
Using different words as we go through when the patient is speaking, just to show them that you're listening and that you care. And the final one was
using intonation to show appropriate empathy.
Yeah. Great. So that's it for our podcast today on empathy. We hope you got lots of tips today, guys, and make sure that you try and use these sentences and these different phrases throughout your OET speaking exam. And of course, make sure you practice putting all this into practice with, your speaking partner, or if you have a teacher and they can give you some feedback, that would be even better.
So thanks a lot for watching today, and we'll see you again.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.